In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to solo using patterns and motifs. And the reason I'm making this video is because I made another video called the top 10 improvisation patterns you must know. And a lot of those people who commented on that video were asking me, well, Adam, you gave us all these patterns. How do we use these patterns to play a solo? Because the video was kind of long, showing a lot of different patterns and a lot of ideas that you can use to base your solos on. So today I'm going to try to answer that question to the best of my ability and show you how I would go through the process of taking a motivic idea or a small pattern and developing it throughout the course of a solo. Using this process is going to be a really good way to help your solo sound more musical and more logical, and I think it's just a really fun way to play solos. So the first step in the process is to create a small pattern, and we're just going to do this without a track or anything at first, and then I'll show you what it would sound like if I play it along with a track. So the pattern I'm going to use for most of this video is this pattern right here. And we're going to be able to do a ton of different stuff with just that 3-note little pattern. And that pattern is actually one of the ones that is from the video that I mentioned, 10 improv patterns you must know. So I don't want to get too much into theory, but you really want to have at least a basic understanding of the structure that you created. So this pattern, we would just think of it as a note, then going up a whole step, then going up a fourth. Now, this is already a ton of information, believe it or not, because we're going to use this to be able to move this pattern around later. But for now, you just make your pattern, and it could be anything. It could be something like this. Or it could be something like this. Or it could be something like this. Any very simple small pattern. So this is what that would sound like along with the track. Now here comes the really fun stuff. The third thing that we can do is start changing just the rhythm of that pattern. We're not worrying about notes right now. We're just thinking about all the different rhythms that we can come up with. So this is what that would sound like. All right, now we just changed the rhythm of that pattern, and as you can see, there's already a ton of different possibilities you can come up with. You can start playing faster rhythms, you can start repeating some of the notes to create a more rhythmic effect, but still keeping that structure intact. You can displace the rhythm. There's a million different things that you can do with rhythm, and I definitely didn't tap into every single one in that little clip. Now that you change the rhythm, you can start changing the order of the notes. So instead of always going like this, you can do this, or this, or this. You can start changing just the order of those notes and the rhythms, and that would sound like this. Okay, cool. So we're already starting to see how we can, just with the tools that we covered so far, we can get a ton of different stuff out of just that one little simple idea. Which, by the way, I like this style of soloing because it's just kind of less work. You don't have to come up with all this stuff. Anyway, the next thing that we can do is we can finally get into start changing some of the notes. And we can start by just changing one of the notes on top. You can start changing the bottom note. You can experiment with just changing one of the notes in the pattern. And that's going to create this effect that you can still tell it's the same idea or similar idea, but we're just changing one of the notes so it sounds different, a little bit different every time. Okay, step number 6. Now is where we can really start expanding on that idea we came up with. And this one, I'm just gonna warn you, it takes some fretboard knowledge to really be able to pull off properly. So if you don't feel comfortable with your fretboard knowledge, you don't feel comfortable with the intervals in a key and where you are in a given key when you're soloing, then make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com and check out the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course. I designed this course specifically so that when you're done with it, you're gonna have total comfort in any key and know what the intervals are, the scale degrees are, and be that much more comfortable in your soloing all over the neck, and you're not going to have to rely on just using pentatonic patterns and things like this. You can actually understand what you're playing. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to take that structure and we're going to move every single one of the notes in that structure up by one step in the key. And this is where the tricky part comes in, because when you're dealing with a key center, you have whole steps and half steps. So you need to understand where you are in the key to know whether or not you need to move your note up a whole step or up a half step. So let's go through that really slowly, and then I'll show you how it can be done in the context of a solo with the track. So we have in that structure, again, we have D, E, and A. And we've mainly been playing in the key of C/A natural minor, which is just all the natural notes, so the simplest key that we can be playing in. And like I said, you want to be able to do this in other keys, but we're just going to go over this super easy key because there's no sharps and flats. So if I wanted to take that entire structure and move it up a diatonic step, which means a step within the key. Diatonic means within the key. So in this case, we're moving the D up a whole step. Then E, what used to be E, is moving up a half step. And then what used to be A is moving up a whole step. And that gives us this. And then if I do that again and again and again, I can keep moving this pattern around. So now I'm going to move E to F, and then what the old F was moves up to G, and then what was the old B moves up to C. So now we get this. So far with the two transpositions we've done, we have this. And we can keep going through that same process, moving each of the notes in the pattern up a letter, up a degree in the key, and we would get something like this. And then once we're done with that, we can do the same thing going back down. We can start moving each of them down a step in the key. Also, all the patterns in that 10 improv patterns you need to know video, they're all transposed for you if you look at the notation in the PDF. So each one of them is basically just a little pattern, just like the one we started off with in this video, and then they're moved up a step in the key every time, and then eventually moved back down just like that. But you want to be able to do that process yourself and not have to rely on just looking at some sheet that shows you just exactly what to play. You want to know how to go through that process in your head, because then you'll be able to actually do this in real time while you're soloing, which is the most important part. So this is what it would sound like in a solo with a track. Now that you understand moving that structure up a step in the key and down steps in the key, now you can actually move that structure around freely in the key. So you can take that structure and move it somewhere else in the key where we still have that same intervallic structure, but they're not the same notes. So just without a track, it would sound something like this. So you can see it's very clear that's the same structure, same idea, but I'm moving it around to different places in the key. I have all these different notes that I can start that structure from that I know are in the key and are going to sound mostly correct. Sometimes you run into some problems, in this case with the F note, but that's a separate video. And using that, I can also move up the fretboard a little more quickly, like I could play something like this. Okay, so the last step in the process is really to take everything that we've covered so far and just combine those ideas. Now, you generally want to start with that simple idea all the time because, like I said, it makes it clear to the listener what your idea is. However, you can skip straight from when you have that simple idea in the beginning straight to playing a bunch of stuff all over the fretboard if you want, moving the idea around, changing the notes, or you could very slowly develop, which is what I generally prefer to do. And then you can also just mix in not thinking about a pattern at all and just soloing freely and naturally. And that's actually going to be the best way to get this to integrate fully in your playing, is not be forcing yourself all the time. This is just another tool in your toolbox. So you don't always have to base your solos off of a pattern, but it's, like I said, a really good way to sound more musical and logical. Here's a clip of me playing a full solo using this whole entire process and this concept where it's going to be based on an idea that's super small, just a few notes. Okay, so some final words before I go. The cool thing about this process too is that when you go through the whole thing, you start with your small idea and you keep developing and developing and developing it, moving it around. Eventually, you're just going to come up with a new idea. So you kind of just rinse and repeat this entire process. Once you come up with a new idea in your solo, a new motif, you can go through the exact same thing. You start repeating that motif and then you develop it over and over. And this can help you sound really good for a long time and help you come up with idea after idea after idea and just never ever run out of stuff to play. So like I said, you're going to get the most benefit out of being able to play like this and just being able to improvise in general if you really, really have your fretboard mastered and you know how to play in any key and you know how to play all over the fretboard and you're not just relying on your pentatonic shapes and patterns and just relying on tabs. No, you want to have a true knowledge and understanding of the fretboard. And if you're someone who's really serious about taking your playing to the next level, then make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com and check out the Jamsville GPF's Fretboard Fundamentals course so that you can get your fretboard completely mastered and feel totally free and confident in your soloing. All right, everybody, till next time, listen, learn, and jam.